Hello, and a big welcome to you all here this evening for our webinar, Coping with Exam Anxiety, Support and Advice for Young People During Exam Time. Anxiety is not a bad thing, and it's something that all of us would experience at some stage in our lives. It is when it starts to impact our everyday lives, we may need to look at other ways to manage it. We're coming up to that time of year as we are getting ready for school exams. That might be your first time sitting exams in secondary school, or it might be that you're doing your junior cert and leaving cert, or even your fifth year exams. Whatever exams that you're doing that are coming up for you, you might start to notice that you're feeling a little bit more anxious around this time of year, and that's okay. My name is Elizabeth Kavanagh. I am the Community Engagement Manager and the Shield Anti-Bullying Programme Manager with the ISPCC Childline. Also joining me tonight on the webinar is my colleague Niamh Clark, Community Engagement Manager, and our guest speaker who will be delighted to have with us, Brie O'Neill, who is the Digital Support Coordinator Clinical Lead. Brie is going to talk to us and to you about anxiety and how it affects us. She will focus on increasing your knowledge and help you learn the coping skills to support your child in your life, leaving you with a toolkit of resources. So thank you for taking the time. A little bit of housekeeping before I'm going to talk a little bit about the services that the ISPCC offer before introducing you to our guest speaker, Brie. We have a little bit of housekeeping. You may have noticed that all of the participants, apart from those at the ISPCC, have their cameras off and are automatically on mute. We will be having a Q&A session at the end, so if you have any questions during the webinar, you can send them into us using the Q&A feature, and we will try to get to as many as possible. If we do not get to your question, please feel free to contact us after us for more information, and our details will be shown at the end of the webinar. Also, just a reminder that the webinar is being recorded and it will be made available on the ISPCC digital platforms. So, just gone into the ISPCC services. ISPCC Childline provides a range of services to children and young people and families. The ISPCC Childline service is probably best known for its Childline listening service, which is a 24-hour service available to all children and young people up to and including the age of 18 via the phone and online chat. We also have our Ask Alex service for young people and children, where you can ask a question about anything you want, nothing too big and nothing too small. The next thing we have is around our digital mental health and wellbeing programs, which are aimed at reducing anxiety for children and young people, and digital programs for parents and carers around managing their own anxiety while supporting an anxious child or teen. We have a support line, which is a listening service offering information, advice, emotional support and emotional support to parents and carers, and it's open between 9 to 1 Monday to Friday. And you can call it on 01 522 4300. And finally, we are proud and delighted to say that Vodafone Ireland Foundation has partnered with DCU's Anti-Bullying Centre and Childline by the ISPCC to develop and launch Tozy, which is a new app aimed at creating a safer and more positive online space for young people. It's free to download and available on smartphones in Ireland, both on the iOS and the Android. Tozy aims to educate, empower and support young people with the tools and advice they need to have a more positive online experience delivered through engaging features within the app. So for more information on any of the services, feel free to log into the ispcc.ie. So finally now, I'd like to introduce you to our guest speaker this evening, Brie O'Neill. Brie O'Neill started her career in psychology in Cape Town, South Africa. After graduating cum laude and obtaining her honours degree in 2015, Brie gained experience in both individual and group counselling, crisis and trauma counselling, devising and implementing treatment plans, developing and presenting psychoeducational content, and creating and conducting participant interviews and online service, while conducting career and psychometric assessments while working in the private sector as well as voluntary basis as a counsellor and researcher. Brie fulfilled a lifelong dream when she moved to Ireland and obtained her master's degree in psychology from the University of Limerick in 2020. Bree has joined the ISPCC in 2021 and has played a pivotal role in the promotion, delivery and coordination of the digital mental health and wellbeing programmes, with both a professional interest and personal experience of anxiety. Bree strives to assist others in building their resilience, conquering their fears and developing healthy coping mechanisms. So Bree is going to talk to you about anxiety and how it affects us. She will focus on increasing your knowledge and help you learn coping skills to support the child in your life, leaving you, as I said, with the toolkit for you and your life, for the child in your life. So, Bree, I'll give it over to you. We're delighted to have you. Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. That was a really warm welcome, and I'm delighted to be here. We have a lot of interesting content to get to, so we'll jump right in. So you may ask, what exactly is anxiety? And I'd like to share with you the fact that anxiety is normal. It's a normal reaction to stress, and actually something we inherited from our ancestors to help keep us safe. It's something that all of us will experience at some stage in our lives. And actually, anxiety can help ensure we prepare for an important event like this presentation I'm giving now, or an exam. And it can also help us respond to a threat, such as a snake or a speeding car. Anxiety does become a problem, though, when it is more intense and lasts longer than it should. And also when it interferes with how we go about in our daily lives, such as maybe not wanting to go to the shop to buy something we need, or go to school, or do an activity with our friends. Anxiety makes us believe that the danger is just too big, too scary to face, and also, importantly, that we don't actually have the ability or the resources to cope with the danger. If you experience anxiety, you're almost certainly not alone. Statistics show that out of all the many mental health concerns, anxiety and depressive disorders are the most frequently found mental health disorders amongst 10 to 24-year-olds in Ireland. So that means around 63%, or 6 out of 10 young people, may experience anxiety. So you may ask, oh, how does my body respond to anxiety? And to answer this question, it's most helpful to look at the 3 Fs. Now, some of you might have heard of these already. The 3 Fs, fight, flight, or freeze, is an inbuilt response to stress that, as I mentioned earlier, we've inherited from our ancestors, and it helps us respond to threats or something that we might consider dangerous. In other words, it refers to the way in which we handle situations that can cause anxiety, or when your brain thinks you're in danger. And knowing how our bodies react can be really helpful when it comes to learning how to manage your anxiety. So if we look at the fight response, that's your body's way of facing a threat aggressively, where we take an action to handle the threat. To do this, our body gets ready by increasing our heart rate and our breathing to make sure that we are ready to act. Our muscles become tense, our pupils, the black part in the middle of our eyes, become widened to allow in more light so we can see better. And we may experience a dry mouth, and that's because our body wants to use whatever energy it has on more important things like getting enough oxygen. People who experience the fight response fight response when facing anxiety may feel the need to physically lash out or argue or raise their voice. So that might be sound familiar to you. On the other hand, we have flight, which means your body is urging you to run, to escape from the danger. To prepare to escape, your heart rate may go up. You may experience kind of tense muscles. You may feel like you're trapped, or like the room is getting smaller and kind of closing in on you. You may also feel have trouble keeping still or not fidgeting. If you go into flight mode when in a stressful situation, like having an argument with your parents, for example, you may just walk away from the conversation or go to your room. Or if you're at school and you know you're going to go to a class that you don't particularly enjoy, you're not comfortable with the teacher, you may go hide in the bathroom instead. Finally, freeze is your body's way of just shutting down. Your heart rate, opposite to what we see in fight and flight, it actually slows down. A nice example is to think of a cowering mouse trying to hide from a cat. What do they do? Try and picture it. Stop or freeze, remain very still, barely breathing. It's almost as if they're pretending they're not there or they don't exist at all. So if you react to danger by freezing, your brain may just be using that time to work out how exactly to respond to the threat. You may end up feeling numb or confused, and you may even have trouble speaking and concentrating. So moving on to the symptoms, anxiety can be felt in many ways, and you may have experienced some or even all of the symptoms that I'm going to talk about this evening. Things like tummy aches or an increased heart rate, which we mentioned earlier, where it just feels like your heart is pumping really hard and really fast. One that not many people know to associate with anxiety is a numbing or tingling sensation in your fingertips or your lips, could be your feet or your hands, and then again, that sort of tight feeling in your chest. Anxiety can also cause a change in your eating or sleeping patterns. It can bring about nightmares, really horrible to deal with, and difficulty with focusing or remembering things. You may also find yourself having emotional outbursts that don't actually quite suit the situation, or you feel that you're quick to anger or irritability at something someone said or did that normally you wouldn't feel that way. You might also feel like you're worrying about things all the time, or you find yourself needing constant reassurance from others, like a friend or a parent or a teacher. And then finally, another symptom of anxiety is avoiding certain situations or people or activities. And we do that so we don't have to feel that sort of uncomfortable, anxious feeling. So now that we are armed with an understanding of anxiety and have some knowledge around its symptoms, we can start tackling how to deal with anxiety in a helpful and healthy way. One way to do so is what is known as monitoring. And this is where we can keep an eye on situations or events that make us feel anxious, and also at what level that anxiety is. And we would do so before, during, and after the situation. And we can measure our anxiety by rating it out of 10. So with 1, pretty much no anxiety, it's not really existing, and 10 being I'm a volcano and I'm about to explode. And by monitoring, we are then able to use techniques, mindfulness tools such as breathing exercises or grounding meditations before the anxiety reaches too high of a level. It can also help to look at the situation that causes anxiety in a more realistic way. So what often happens to us when we're anxious is before the event or the situation, we exaggerate what we think we are going to feel. And keeping track of what we actually felt before, during, and after can be used to help calm us in a similar situation in the future. Oh, this is the fun one. Another way to monitor anxiety is to use body mapping. This is a visual activity that may be useful for us to recognize and understand big emotions like anxiety. The main aim with this activity is to develop self-awareness. Remember, awareness is key. around the physical symptoms of anxiety that we experience, so that then we have the opportunity to respond to our body's warning signals. Body mapping begins with scanning the body to notice where and how we experience the emotion. So that could be butterflies in the belly, or you experience sweaty hands, or that tightening feeling in our chests. It can be a really fun thing to do. You can use different colors to show your different feelings, and make note if sometimes you feel lightheaded when you're anxious, or you might experience headaches, for example. Breathing exercises. I know we hear this all the time, but the reason we do is because they help. They're incredibly helpful, actually, to manage the symptoms of anxiety. And the great thing about them is they can be used anywhere at any time without anybody else knowing that you're doing them. So how they work is they activate what is known as our parasympathetic nervous system. We don't need to know the huge ins and outs about it, but think of the parasympathetic nervous system as a network of nerves that relax your body after you experience stress or danger. It also helps to run some other important processes in the body, like digestion, which would happen during times when we are feeling safe and relaxed. So activating this system actually hurries your body up to get to a period of feeling relaxed and de-stressed. Now, one of my personal favorites that I use when I'm feeling anxious is what is known as the 4-7-8 breathing technique. And we can all do it now. You can close your eyes and close your mouth, and then quietly inhale through your nose to the count of 4. You then hold your breath for the count of 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then you're going to exhale through your mouth, making a whooshing noise for the count of 8. So in through your nose for 4, hold for 7, out your mouth for 8. You do need to repeat that process around 3 times. So you would have done it for 4 breath cycles in total. And that's because it does take a little while for the effects to kick in with our bodies. Another great way, and I maybe as old as I am, I definitely still do this myself, is blowing bubbles. It's fun, it's a great way to distract your mind, and it also helps to regulate our breathing and manage our anxiety. The best advice I can give you when using these exercises is to make them a habit before you actually need them. So before being in a situation that causes anxiety. It just, can you imagine if your anxiety is at a level 10, or level 8, you've been monitoring it, and then you try and use a breathing technique for the first time and your mind is all aflutter. It's really difficult to do. So just make them a habit. You can do it on your walk to school, basically at any time. Nobody else has to know you're doing it. And you can use these relaxation techniques alongside the monitoring to help get your anxiety under control. This is a big one, and not many people like to hear it, but the fact of the matter is, to help manage our anxiety, we need to avoid avoidance. So what you can see on the slide there is what is known as the cycle of anxiety. And this helps us to understand that avoiding anxiety-inducing situations may bring on a feeling of relief, but this feeling is temporary, and before long, our anxiety actually just ends up coming back, if not stronger than it was before. Avoiding something that makes us feel anxious in the long term only results in an increase in our physical symptoms, so the sweaty palms, the butterflies in our tummy, And it also causes a loss of confidence in ourselves and our coping abilities, because our brain learns that avoidance makes the anxiety go away, and we never get a chance to prove to ourselves that actually we can handle challenging things. So how do we avoid avoidance? There's some great techniques out there, and one of the most popular would be graded exposure. Another word for it is habituation. And basically, this involves breaking down our fear into easy to do steps. So if you think of it like the steps or rungs on a ladder, we start with the step that causes the least anxiety. So a good example of this is somebody may have a fear of dogs, for example. And the easiest, most doable step to start on for that particular person may be looking at a picture of a dog, or looking at pictures of different dogs doing different things. The next step on the ladder, at the next rung, might be watching a dog video, and so forth. This is done slowly, and you only move on to the next step once the step before no longer causes any anxiety whatsoever. Remember, this does take practice, patience, and persistence. So give yourself time and be kind to yourself when you're trying to face your fear. You're brave doing this, making this ladder and approaching your fears. Be kind about it. Now, I think we'll need to take a step back. There we go. Perfect. Now, all the tips that we've covered so far are quite general when learning to manage anxiety, but they absolutely can be used around exam anxiety as well. The next few that we touch will be focused on exams and studying in particular. So these tips will hopefully really help you manage your anxiety. Firstly, and I know you've probably heard your parents say it and you're tired of hearing it, but the reason everybody says it over and over is because it works. Create a routine. And make sure that this routine that you do create has everything in it, from studying and exam prep to sleeping. Remember, we need a good 8 hours of sleep to function healthily the next day. Don't forget relaxation, socializing, household chores, and of course your well-balanced meals. Another thing you can do, and remember, I think exams, if I have the dates correct, we still have another 3 weeks. You can start your routine now and get going with it. Create a study timetable. Remember, our brains react better when we write something out by hand, so try to do that, even if it means pulling the actual template off the internet, but you fill it in yourself. A great way to make sure that you stick to your routine is to be specific. So if you know from 6 to 7, you need to study history, you put that in your study timetable and you stick to what you've planned. The reason why having a study timetable is so helpful is because having a plan helps make us feel more in control, especially a plan that is well laid out that we can stick to easily. When we have a plan, when we feel more in control, this helps us deal with our feelings of anxiety. This is a note for parents and carers that are on this webinar as well. Give yourself a break after school. Doing so will help you focus later when you get stuck into your studying. I will say be careful about not getting too caught up in your break, whether it's a YouTube video or maybe playing a game, because getting too stuck in, you might find it hard to get back into kind of the studying mindset. But we absolutely need at least 15 to 20 minutes to decompress after the kind of chaos that school can be. Some of you may feel like quite isolated when you're studying. It's a lonely endeavor. So let your family know you're studying and that you may need help. Don't be afraid to let your family know if you're feeling overwhelmed. Remember, they can't help you if they don't know about it. So communicate with them. I'm absolutely sure your parents want to be on hand if you need it. Finally, with this slide, use a timer to keep you on track. Our brains generally can maintain focus for 45 minutes. This does differ from person to person, but around 45 minutes is optimum for our brain. So try to stick to that time and then give yourself a 5 to 10 minute break where you call a friend or play with play with one of your pets, or even go for a walk. I will say try not to use your mobile phones, because mobiles come with a whole bunch of other distractions. It might be really nice if your parent or carer could get you a clock. You can put it on your desk and use that instead of your phone. Another great tip is to choose a place to study where you won't be interrupted or distracted by things like the TV or the radio in the kitchen. Keep in mind, our brains associate our beds with sleep, which is a good thing. But you do run the risk of falling asleep if you try to study on your bed. So I recommend not studying there. Turn off notifications on your phone, or turn your phone on silent if you think it would be too tempting. All of us would probably feel that. Or you can even leave your phone in another room, or give it to a sibling or a parent to look after while you study. Stick to your timetable, and you can always go back to something later on if you feel it would be good for you to go back, or you haven't quite finished it. But try to stick to your timetable. It can be really helpful to reduce the stress in the morning if you take care of what you need to the night before. So the day before, the night before exam, pack your school bag. Certain subjects may require certain things, in particular like maths. You generally need a few things. So make sure you have everything. The last thing you want is to be scrambling for it in the morning. Being prepared, being ready, and not rushing about will help you keep your anxiety within manageable limits. On the day, use your relaxation exercises that I know you've been practicing for the last few weeks. And you can do these once you're seated and throughout the exam as you need to. I used to do that. Close my eyes, do my breathing and grounding exercises, make sure I'm present and feeling strong and capable in the exam room. Another thing that we are all prone to doing after an exam is conducting the post-mortem. Don't do that. There's nothing you can do now. Your answers are submitted. Discussing it with your friends and hearing all the different answers that they've given is only going to bring on more anxiety for you. So minimize your stress. Don't have that whole post-mortem conversation. Give yourself a good rest after the exam, and it's ready now for your mind's ready now to concentrate on studying for your next exam. Another really useful way to manage your stress and anxiety around exams is to remind yourself that thoughts are not fact, and that when we are worried, we often tend to see things in a more negative light rather than realistically. We're all prone to that. So you may want to ask yourself, is this thought really true, and is there evidence to back up this thought? Could it be that actually I'm just tired, I didn't sleep well the night before, I'm really hungry, and I had a horrible day? Is there another more fair or realistic way that I can think about things? Have I got good evidence that actually proves that I could think about something in a different way? Challenge your thoughts is what I'm recommending here. So we can challenge our negative thoughts, and I really encourage you to do this. It's a habit that you can employ for the rest of your lives. So if we get into it now, it only makes things easier going on. We're looking to create more helpful ways of thinking. So instead of I'm going to fail, try saying, I know I'm just feeling anxious right now and I'm going to do my best, and my best is good enough. Many of us may worry about maybe letting others down, especially our parents or a favorite teacher. So instead, try to remember, my parents are proud of me no matter what. For every negative thought, try to replace it with a more realistic one. Write them down if you have to, and you can pull out that little card or wherever you wrote your helpful thoughts down when you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed. And then finally, another really good way to handle anxiety and exam stress, especially if you're 15 years and up, is with our digital mental health and well-being programs. These are free digital programs that are specifically aimed at young people to help them manage their anxiety, easily accessed via any smart device. And a lot of the techniques that we covered in the webinar today are accessed on via these programs. And they really help you to develop more helpful ways to think, feel, and behave. I think we're running out of time, so I'll cut it short there. That's all right, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Bree, and it was a brilliant session, really informative, and I hope everybody watching has taken it away as much as I have listening here to you this evening. I particularly really like that tip about avoid the avoidance. I think that's a really important tip to take away from it. So we're going to run a quick poll, anonymous poll, before we go to Q&A to gather feedback on the webinar. And if you wouldn't mind taking a few seconds to complete it as it pops up on your screen, we'd really appreciate it. While you're doing that, I just want to remind people that we do currently have space available on our digital mental health and wellbeing programs that Bree spoke about just there. And if you would like to find out more, please do contact Bree and the team at spacefromanxiety@ispcc.ie. Just a reminder that young people do have to be 15 years old to engage in the program, but we do have two programs that parents can engage with, and that's supporting an anxious child for 5 to 11-year-olds and supporting an anxious teen from 12 to 18 years of age as well. So just as you're finishing that, we'll just give you a little bit of feedback that a young person recently gave us on the program. They said, I'm feeling a lot better. I'm not worrying about things as much, and I have been doing everything I can to achieve my goals. I also feel a lot more confident than before, and I feel better about myself. I also feel like I can talk to people if I'm having a bad day or about how I'm feeling. I also feel like I'm getting everything I wanted out of this program, and I feel like I'm a new person, and I'm definitely a lot happier. Thank you. It was lovely feedback. So we might just close the poll there now for the moment, and you see a couple of questions came in. But just before that, a quick reminder of some of the services that the ISPCC has to offer. So we've Childline. If you want to contact Childline, you can do so on childline.ie. We have our Ask Alex service for children and young people, where you can ask questions about anything you want, and there's nothing too big or small. So that's if you go to Childline and you go /ask-Alex. Then we've our support line for parents, and that's open Monday to Friday, 9 to 1. And you can contact us on 01522 4300. And like Bree and I mentioned just there a few moments ago, we have our digital mental health and wellbeing programs. And like I said, there's space available. And not forgetting the Tozy app that is free to download as well. So Bree, a couple of questions came in there. So just a reminder, if people want to ask questions, you can pop them into the Q&A function there. Bree, what do I do if I find it hard to remember the tools I need to cope? Then what do I do if the tools don't work?
That is a tough one. I would suggest writing things down. If this question is coming from a young person, which I suspect it is, enlist the help of your parents or siblings. Let them know what ones you're trying out and how they work. And if you're feeling stuck, you can have somebody do it with you, which can make you feel less alone when you're doing it. And they might remember the steps that you don't. Not every tip and technique that we covered here tonight might work perfectly for you. And the great thing about them is a lot of them are quite adaptable. You can change them to suit what works for you. So try a few out. Remember my advice about doing it when before you in an anxious moment. So start making them a habit. And then you can find out the ones that really work for you and maybe skip the ones that don't. And that would be my advice for dealing with techniques that you sometimes forget and might not work for you.
Yeah, it sounds like the key message is habit forming, isn't it, Bree? That really
Absolutely.
practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
We have another question came in. My friends seem to be studying loads. How long should I be studying for?
Ah, yes.
Mm.
I definitely remember from my teen years phoning friends to find out if they started studying that day, and that means I should too. It might be helpful to know that different ages, firstly, have different requirements. So older children may need to spend a bit more time studying because you're dealing with slightly more complex subjects. But another important point to keep in mind is that all students are different when it comes to your ability to focus, for example, and even academic ability as well.
Mhm.
But what's actually more important than the amount of time spent studying is how effectively you study. So
Mhm.
rather than think of the length of time that I should be dedicating to study, ask yourself, what do I need to do or what do I need to achieve today? And then to help achieve your study goals for the day, like I mentioned earlier, is have your study timetable, have a routine, and stick to it.
Okay, all very good tips and advice there again, Bree. So thanks very much. I This is the last one I think I see in at the moment. So I study a lot to prepare for exams, but my mind seems to go blank in the exam. So somebody just looking for some tips and tools around that. I think that happens a lot of us actually.
You're so right, Neve. It's I would say my response to that is you're absolutely not alone. Going blank is actually very common in young people. It's so common it even has a name. It's called test anxiety. And test anxiety interferes with your memory and your performance during the exam. There could be many different reasons for this. The first one that comes to my mind is that the stress of the exams makes your body go into the fight, flight, or freeze mode that I mentioned earlier. And this has a really powerful effect on the way your brain works and its ability to think and focus. Another reason, and I know you're not going to like me saying this, is a lack of sleep. Many students may spend the night before an exam studying and cramming furiously. Don't do this. As I mentioned earlier, mindfulness techniques are really helpful for us to activate our parasympathetic nervous systems, so to get our bodies to try and calm down. So it's the breathing exercises and the grounding exercises. And then in regards to sleep, make sure you get enough sleep the night before. In other words, stick to your healthy routine and the study timetable that you set for yourself. Getting enough sleep really does improve your concentration, your focus, your memory, and it helps keep you bright and alert.
Yeah, I think we could all do a little bit more sleep free country.
We're
Something we
all
need to work
guilty.
towards. Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
definitely so important. Everything feels a little bit better when you've had a good night's sleep. So yeah, great tips. Bree, we're going to finish up there this evening now. So I'm just popping up a slide there with some contact details there. So you can contact Bree, Elizabeth from Shield, or myself for Smart Moves. And the contact details are up on the screen there now. But we'd like to conclude tonight's webinar by saying a big